The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for over 10,000 years. No one challenged them. No one dared. The Council was made up of 7 alien species who had reached space long before humans even invented the wheel. They believed they owned the galaxy, and any new species that learned to travel between stars had to follow their rules. The rule was simple: pay us or suffer. Captain Lisa Morris stood on the bridge of the Earthship Pathfinder. She was tall, with short brown hair and eyes that missed nothing. Today was supposed to be a normal day testing the new faster-than-light drive near the edge of our solar system. The Shaw Fujikawa drive was humanity's greatest invention, allowing people to travel to distant stars in days instead of centuries. "Drive systems are green across the board, Captain," said Lieutenant Greg Wilson, his fingers moving quickly over his control panel. "Ready for test jump number 5. Lisa nodded. "Proceed, Lieutenant. Standard jump protocol." The Pathfinder hummed as its engines prepared to tear a hole in space. But before they could activate the jump, alarms blared across the bridge. "Massive energy signature detected," shouted Officer Diane Miller from the sensor station. Her eyes hardened. It's huge, Captain." Lisa leaned forward in her chair. "On screen." The main view screen showed empty space for a moment, then reality seemed to bend. A ship appeared. No, not just a ship. A massive vessel that made the Pathfinder look like a toy boat next to an aircraft carrier. The alien ship glittered like crystal, its surface constantly shifting and changing shape as if it were somehow alive. "My God," whispered Greg. Lisa kept her voice steady. "All stop. Power down the Shaw Fujikawa drive. Open all communication channels." For several tense minutes, nothing happened. The crew of the Pathfinder stared at the alien vessel, while it seemed to study them in return. "Captain," said Diane, her voice shaking slightly, "we're receiving a transmission." Lisa straightened her uniform. "Put it through." The screen changed, to show a being that looked like it was made of living crystal. It had no mouth, but a voice filled the bridge, speaking perfect English. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Emissary Zalthrak of the Vornathi, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. Your species has now developed faster-than-light travel. This advancement has brought you to our attention." Lisa stepped forward. "I am Captain Lisa Morris of the United Earth Navy vessel Pathfinder. We come in peace and friendship." The crystal being made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peace is available to you, but friendship is earned over millennia, not offered freely to newcomers. The Council has ruled this galaxy since before your kind left your trees. There is order in our realm, and you will now take your place in it." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "And what place would that be?" "The same as all emerging species," said Zalthrak. "You will provide tribute to the Council. This ensures your protection and guarantees your limited expansion rights." "Tribute?" Lisa asked, though she already knew what the answer would be. "You have one standard galactic cycle, approximately 3 of your Earth months, to gather and present 30% of all refined, rare Earth elements your planet has produced, along with 10% of your total freshwater reserves." The bridge crew exchanged shocked glances. Those demands would cripple Earth's economy and cause a water crisis on a global scale. "And if we refuse?" Lisa asked, keeping her voice level. The crystal being's surface rippled. "Refusal is not an option that has been presented to a new species in 7,000 years. The last who refused no longer exist. Their homeworld is now a mining outpost." Back on Earth, Admiral Paul Hernandez received the transmission from the Pathfinder with a grim expression. Within hours, the news spread across the planet. The existence of aliens was now confirmed, but not in the way anyone had hoped. President Olivia Grant called an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council. The Great Hall was packed with world leaders and military advisors. Screens showed the alien ship, still positioned at the edge of the solar system. "They're just sitting there," said General Jack Miller, "watching us, waiting for us to gather their tribute." President Grant stood up. She was in her 60s with silver hair and a face that showed both wisdom and determination. "They expect us to simply give up our resources and accept their rule. Without question, they expect fear." "And they should," said the Chinese representative. Their technology clearly surpasses our own. We have no choice but to comply. There is always a choice, said Dr. Alan Russell, the creator of the Shaw Fujikawa drive. He was younger than most in the room, barely 40, with messy hair and tired eyes from too many long nights in his lab. The drive system we've developed works on principles the Council may not understand. Admiral Hernandez leaned forward. Explain. Faster-than-light drive doesn't just move through space. It temporarily converts matter to energy in a controlled way, then reforms it at the destination. Theoretically, he paused, looking nervous. Go on, Doctor, urged President Grant. Theoretically, we could modify it to project that energy conversion effect outward. It was never designed as a weapon, but the math suggests it could be incredibly powerful, and unlike anything their science might expect. The room fell silent as they considered this. Admiral Hernandez broke the silence. How long would it take to develop this projection system? With unlimited resources? Maybe 2 months. President, Grant stood up. Then that's what we'll do. Publicly, we'll appear to be gathering their tribute. Meanwhile, we'll prepare Operation Warning Light. If the Council wants to learn about humanity, let's teach them our first lesson. We don't respond well to threats. In the following weeks, Earth was a hive of activity. On the surface, it appeared that nations were cooperating to gather the demanded resources. Ships collected water from the poles. Mining operations increased. All exactly as the Council would expect. But deep beneath the lunar surface, in a secret facility, Dr. Russell worked day and night with Commander Susan Collins, a brilliant tactical officer with degrees in both military strategy and theoretical physics. Together, they modified Earth's newest warship, the Defiance. The Defiance wasn't as large as the Council ships, but it carried Earth's most advanced technology, and now it carried humanity's hope. Meanwhile, Captain Morris and the Pathfinder maintained regular contact with emissary Zalthrak. The alien seemed increasingly curious about humans. Your species behaves differently than others we have encountered, the emissary noted during one transmission. Most respond with either immediate compliance or futile aggression. You appear to be doing neither. Humans are complicated, Lisa replied with a smile. We're full of surprises. As the deadline approached, humanity prepared to show just how surprising they could be. The moon base was hidden on the far side, away from both Earth and the watching eyes of the Council ships. Inside the main lab, Dr. Alan Russell hadn't slept properly in weeks. His eyes were red, his hands shook slightly, but excitement kept him going. Hand me that calibrator, he said to Commander Susan Collins. Susan passed him the tool. She was 35 with dark skin and short black hair. Unlike the doctor, she maintained a strict sleep schedule. A tired soldier made mistakes, and Earth couldn't afford any. Will it work? She asked, watching as Alan made tiny adjustments to the device that now filled half the lab. It looked like a giant metal cone with thousands of wires and tubes running through it. In theory, Alan said, the Shaw Fujikawa drive works by converting matter to energy, then back to matter at the destination point. We're modifying it to project that conversion effect outward without the reformation step. And if your theory is wrong? Alan finally looked up from his work. Then we're all in big trouble. On the other side of the moon, Admiral Paul Hernandez watched the final preparations of the Defiance. The ship wasn't large by military standards, only 300 meters long, but it represented the best technology humans had ever built. And now it carried their most powerful weapon. His assistant, Lieutenant Ben Howard, approached with a tablet. Sir, the latest report from Captain Morris. The Council ships are still in position. No change in their behavior. Paul nodded. And our public preparations for the tribute? Moving exactly as planned. The Council observers are watching large water tankers being filled in the Arctic. Mining operations for rare earth elements have increased by 40% globally. Everything looks like compliance. Good. Keep it that way until the last possible moment. At the edge of the solar system, Captain Lisa Morris continued her role as Earth's primary contact with the Council. Her ship, the Pathfinder, remained positioned near the massive alien vessel. Every day, she spoke with emissary Zalthrak. Your water collection proceeds efficiently, the crystal being observed during their daily communication. This is wise. We understand what's expected of us, Lisa replied carefully. Yet you continue to ask questions about the Council, our technology, our history. This is unusual for a tribute species. Lisa smiled slightly. Humans are naturally curious. We like to learn. Learning has limits, Zalthrak said. Some knowledge is not for lesser species. Lisa's smile faded. And who decides which species are lesser? Power decides. The crystal surface of the alien rippled. The Council has existed for millennia because we understand this fundamental truth. In Washington, D.C., President Olivia Grant met with a small group of world leaders and the chief negotiator for Earth, Eric Johnson. Eric was 50, with graying hair and kind eyes that hid a sharp mind. He had spent his career solving international conflicts before humans knew there were other worlds to worry about. The Council has agreed to a final meeting before the tribute deadline, Eric explained. They want to inspect a sample of what we're offering. President Grant nodded. Good. That's our opportunity. When they come to inspect, we begin Operation Warning Light. It's risky, said the British Prime Minister. If they detect our true intentions, they won't, the President interrupted. According to all our observations, they're completely confident in their superiority. They've done this thousands of times with other species. They have no reason to expect anything different from us. Pride before the fall, Eric said quietly. Exactly, President Grant replied. It's time to show them that humanity isn't like the others. 2 days later, a smaller Council ship entered Earth orbit. Unlike the massive crystal vessel at the edge of the solar system, this one was only about 500 meters long, still impressive by human standards, but clearly just a diplomatic craft. A shuttle departed from it, heading toward the United Nations building in New York, where world leaders waited. Emissary Zalthrak would set foot on Earth for the first time. Meanwhile, on the far side of the moon, the Defiance prepared to launch. Commander Susan Collins took her position on the bridge. The prototype weapon, now called the Russell projector, had been successfully installed. Whether it would work remained to be seen. All systems are go, reported Officer Larry Kim from the weapons station. Russell projector is powered up and stable. Susan nodded. Prepare for silent launch. No communications once we clear the moon base until we reach the target position. As the Defiance slipped away from the moon, Emissary Zalthrak arrived at the United Nations. The alien moved with surprising grace, its crystalline body catching the light as it entered the General Assembly Hall. World leaders watched with mixed emotions: fear, awe, anger, determination. Eric Johnson stepped forward to greet the alien. Welcome to Earth, emissary. Your world is interesting, Zalthrak said, looking around. So much water, yet so inefficiently used. The Council will help you manage your resources better once you join our system properly. About that, Eric said, we have some questions about the exact terms of this arrangement. The emissary's surface rippled in what humans had come to recognize as impatience. The terms are standard. You provide tribute, we provide protection and limited expansion rights. There is no negotiation. There's always room for negotiation, Eric insisted. For example, the water you're requesting would cause significant problems for our ecosystems and your concerns are noted but irrelevant, Zalthrak interrupted. The Council has determined the appropriate tribute. Your role is to provide it. President Grant, who had been quietly watching, now stood. And if we proposed an alternative arrangement? One where Earth joins the galactic community as equals, not as tribute payers? For the first time, the alien seemed genuinely surprised. Equals? Your species has barely left its own planet. You have no standing to propose equality with races that have ruled the stars for millennia. Perhaps, the President said, but we believe we have something to contribute, something unique. All species believe they are special, Zalthrak said dismissively. Reality proves otherwise. Deep in space, the Defiance reached its target position in the Kuiper Belt. Before them floated a small planetoid that Council ships had been using as an observation post. No life forms were present. The Council used automated systems to monitor this far out. Susan looked at the main screen. This is it, just as we planned. Officer Kim looked nervous. Commander, if this doesn't work, it will work, Susan said, firmly. Dr. Russell's math is solid. This will be a demonstration, not an attack. She opened a secure channel to Earth. This is Defiance. We are in position, awaiting final authorization. In New York, President Grant received the message on a small device hidden in her hand. She looked at Emissary Zalthrak, who was still explaining the many ways humans were inferior to Council species. Perhaps, she said, interrupting the alien, it's time we showed you something about humanity that might change your perspective. She pressed a button on the device, sending a single command. Proceed. On the Defiance, Susan received the authorization. She took a deep breath and gave the order they had all been waiting for. Fire the Russell projector. The Defiance trembled as the Russell projector powered up. Lights dimmed across the ship as energy flowed into the weapon. On the bridge, Commander Susan Collins gripped the arms of her chair. No one had ever fired anything like this before. Energy levels at maximum, Officer Larry Kim reported. His voice was steady despite the sweat on his forehead. Target locked. Fire, Susan ordered. For a brief moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a beam of pure white light shot from the front of the Defiance. It didn't look impressive at first, just a thin line stretching through space. But wherever it passed, the very fabric of reality seemed to ripple and distort. The beam struck the uninhabited planetoid. There was no explosion, no dramatic blast. Instead, the planetoid simply vanished. 1 second it was there, a dark rock floating in space. The next second it was gone, leaving only a brief flash of light and then nothing. Silence fell across the bridge. Everyone stared at the empty space where the planetoid had been. Did it work? Someone whispered. Officer Kim checked his instruments, eyes wide. The planetoid is gone. Completely gone. Not destroyed. It's just not there anymore. The sensors show a brief energy spike, then nothing. Susan let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The Russell projector converted the entire planetoid to energy, just as Dr. Russell predicted. She turned to communications. Open, a channel to all Council vessels in the system. Back at the United Nations in New York, Emissary Zalthrak suddenly stopped mid-sentence. The crystalline alien froze, then began to pulse with an inner light. What is happening? Eric Johnson asked, looking concerned. The alien didn't respond immediately. Its surface rippled in patterns humans had never seen before. Finally, Zalthrak spoke, but its voice had changed. It sounded less confident, almost shocked. What have you done? President Grant stood up straighter. I believe you're receiving news about a small demonstration we've arranged. Demonstration? The alien's form pulsed faster. You have destroyed one of our observation outposts with technology that should be beyond your capabilities. Not destroyed, Eric corrected calmly. Converted. There was no one on that outpost, as you well know. We made sure of that before proceeding. Around the room, the other world leaders remained silent, watching the exchange with a mixture of fear and pride. This was the moment they had planned for, the gamble that would either secure humanity's place among the stars or doom them all. In space, the 11 remaining Council observation ships had gone on full alert. Their sensors had detected the disappearance of the planetoid, but had failed to properly register the weapon that caused it. The energy signature was unlike anything in their vast databases. Captain Natalie Reed of the Defiance opened a channel to the Council fleet. Her voice was firm as she delivered the message humanity had prepared. Attention, Council vessels. This was a demonstration, not an act of war. As you observed, the planetoid was uninhabited, We have no desire for conflict, but we will not be treated as a vassal species. We propose a meeting between equals. On the main council ship, the alien leaders gathered in their equivalent of a war room. 7 different species, each with their own unique biology, all united in their shock at what had just happened. The Vornathi counselor, a larger version of Zalthrak, spoke first. In 15,000 years, no emerging species has ever responded to our demands with such audacity. The weapon they used, said the Draxid counselor, a methane-breathing entity with multiple eyes. It operated on principles our science cannot explain. Our sensors could barely detect it. How is this possible? Demanded the insectoid XRRL counselor. Their civilization is primitive. They have only just developed basic faster-than-light travel. Clearly, said the Vornathi, our assessment was flawed. At the United Nations, the meeting had moved to a secure conference room. Emissary Zalthrak had been joined by holographic projections of the 7 council members. President Grant sat with Eric Johnson and several other human leaders facing them across a large table. You realize, said the Vornathi counselor, that we could still destroy your planet. One demonstration does not make you our equal. President Grant nodded. We understand that. But it would cost you, wouldn't it? More than you've ever paid to subjugate a new species before. And for what? To maintain a system that clearly isn't as perfect as you believed? What do you want, humans? Asked the Draxid counselor bluntly. Partnership, not subjugation, Eric replied. We don't want to pay tribute. We want to join the galactic community as equals, with the right to develop our own path among the stars. The council members exchanged looks that even humans could tell were uncomfortable. The energy conversion technology you demonstrated, said the Vornathi carefully. Would you be willing to share it? President Grant smiled slightly. We might be willing to discuss limited technology exchange as part of a broader agreement between equals. On the Defiance, the mood was mixed. The demonstration had worked perfectly, but the ship's systems were showing strain. Alarms beeped, softly at several stations. Status report, Susan ordered. Officer Kim checked his readings with a frown. The Russell projector is, well, it's fried, Commander. The energy discharge was too much for the containment systems. We won't be firing it again without major repairs. Susan nodded, keeping her expression neutral. That's not surprising. It was always expected to be a one-shot demonstration. She lowered her voice. Make sure that information doesn't leave this bridge. As far as the Council knows, we could fire again at any moment. The next 3 days were filled with intense negotiations. The Council representatives remained on Earth, talking with human leaders about a new type of relationship, something they had never offered to any emerging species before. Lieutenant Kyle Peters, a young officer assisting Eric Johnson, noticed something interesting during these talks. The Council members were trying to hide it, but he could see subtle signs of fear in their behavior. They weren't just angry that humans had defied them. They were genuinely afraid of what humans might do next. He shared this observation with Eric during a break. Sir, I think they're actually scared of us. Eric considered this. Fear can be useful in negotiations, but it can also be dangerous. We need to find the right balance. Show strength without appearing threatening. How do we do that? By offering them something they want, while standing firm on what matters to us. Eric paused. The Council has ruled through fear for thousands of years. Maybe it's time someone showed them a different way. When talks resumed, Eric shifted his approach. He emphasized how humans wanted to contribute to galactic knowledge, not just take from it. He spoke of collaboration and mutual benefit. Slowly, the Council's posture began to change. The fear remained, but alongside it grew something new, curiosity. Perhaps these humans were different after all. As the third day of negotiations came to a close, President Grant made the final proposal. No tribute. Instead, a new relationship, a cooperative exchange between Earth and the Council. Limited technology sharing, open trade routes, and recognition of Earth's sovereignty. The Council members looked at each other, then back at the humans waiting for their answer. The council chambers fell silent after President Grant's proposal. The 7 alien leaders seemed frozen in thought, their different biology making their expressions hard for humans to read. The Vornathi counselor's crystal form pulsed with inner light. The insectoid Ixoral's antennae twitched rapidly. The gaseous Draxid swirled in its containment suit. Finally, the Vornathi spoke. What you propose has never been done before. The Council does not form exchanges with newly emerged species. Then perhaps it's time for something new, President Grant replied calmly. The universe is vast. Surely there's room for different approaches. Eric Johnson stepped forward. He had been quietly observing the council members, noting how they reacted to different ideas. Now he saw his opening. Honored counselors, he said, his voice respectful but firm. For thousands of years, your system has worked a certain way. Emerging species pay tribute, receive protection, and eventually perhaps earn greater rights. But what if there's a better way? What if cooperation from the beginning leads to greater benefits for everyone? The Draxid counselor's containment suit hissed as it adjusted its atmosphere. Explain what you mean by greater benefits. Eric smiled slightly. The energy conversion technology you witnessed is just one example of human innovation. Our species thinks differently than yours. We solve problems in ways you might not consider. By treating us as partners rather than subjects, you gain access to that innovation. The XRL counselor's mandibles clicked rapidly. You offer technology sharing in exchange for status? Technology you've already demonstrated you're willing to use as a weapon? Not just technology, Eric corrected. New perspectives, fresh ideas. The Council has ruled for millennia, but when was the last time you faced a truly new challenge? When was the last time you grew? This struck a nerve. The Council members shifted uncomfortably. Meanwhile, aboard the Defiance, Commander Susan Collins received new orders from Admiral Hernandez. The ship would remain positioned where it was, maintaining the appearance that it could fire the Russell projector again if needed. The Council didn't need to know it was currently useless. How are the repairs coming? Susan asked Officer Larry Kim as they stood in the damaged weapon control room. Larry shook his head. There's nothing to repair, Commander. The core components are completely fused. Dr. Russell would need to rebuild it from scratch. Susan nodded, keeping her expression neutral for the benefit of the crew. Then we maintain position and stay. Ready? As far as anyone outside this room knows, we're fully operational. Back on Earth, the negotiations continued. Lieutenant Kyle Peters had been assigned to give the Council representatives a tour of the United Nations building. A seemingly small task, but one that gave him valuable time to observe the aliens up close. The Vornathi emissary, Zalthrak, seemed particularly interested in Earth's history displays. Your species fought many wars against itself, the crystal being noted. Studying images from World War II. We did, Kyle admitted. We still have conflicts. We're not perfect. Yet you present a unified front to us. Kyle considered his words carefully. When faced with an external threat, humans tend to set aside their differences. We are not a threat, Zalthrak said, its surface rippling. We bring order. From our perspective, demanding tribute under threat of destruction feels like a threat. The emissary was quiet for a moment. In all our encounters with new species, none have ever described it that way to us directly. They simply comply. Humans value honesty, Kyle said. Sometimes too much for our own good. Later, Kyle shared this conversation with Eric Johnson, who found it fascinating. They've never been challenged before, Eric told President Grant, as they prepared for the next round of talks. Not just militarily, but philosophically, they've never had to justify their system. President Grant nodded. Then let's keep pushing. Not just for ourselves, but for all the species that might come after us. The next meeting began with a surprise. The Council had prepared a counter-proposal. We have considered your position, the Vornathi counselor announced. We propose a modified arrangement. Earth will not pay tribute as originally demanded. Instead, you will join what we are calling a provisional exchange status. Eric leaned forward. What does that entail? You will share the principles of your energy conversion technology, not the complete details, but enough for our scientists to understand the basic concepts. In exchange, we will grant Earth limited access to certain council advancements in medicine and materials science. President Grant exchanged glances with her advisors. And our sovereignty? Recognized. Within your solar system. Further expansion would require additional agreements. It wasn't everything they wanted, but it was far more than any emerging species had ever received from the Council. It was a beginning. We need time to discuss this among ourselves, President Grant said. The Council agreed to a recess. As the human team gathered in a private room, opinions were divided. It's not full equality, said the French representative, but it's much better than paying tribute. Can we trust them? Asked the Indian Prime Minister. Once they understand our technology, what stops them from turning against us? Eric Johnson had been quiet, thinking. I believe they're sincere, he said finally. Not because they've had a moral awakening, but because we've changed their calculation of risk and reward. They've ruled through fear for so long, they've forgotten other possibilities. We've reminded them. Admiral Hernandez joined via secure video link. There's something else to consider. The Russell projector was impressive, but it was also our only one, and it's now inoperable. If negotiations fail, we won't have the same leverage again. This somber news settled over the room. Their position was not as strong as the Council believed. President Grant stood up. Then we accept their offer, but we push for more. This is just the first step in a longer journey. When they returned to the Council, President Grant presented their response. We accept the concept of a provisional exchange status, but with modifications. The technology sharing must be truly reciprocal, and we want a seat at the Council table, not as full members yet, but as observers with the right to speak. The Council members conferred among themselves, their various communication methods creating a strange symphony of clicks, lights, and vibrations. Finally, the Vornathi counselor turned back to the humans. Your request for observer status is unprecedented. But these are unprecedented times. It paused, then continued. We agree to your terms with one condition. No other emerging species can know how this arrangement came about. The official record will state that humans were granted special status due to your unique scientific contributions. Eric Johnson understood immediately. The Council didn't want other species to know they had been forced to compromise. They needed to save face. We can agree to that, President Grant said, as long as the arrangement itself is clear. And so it was done. After 3 days of intense negotiations, humanity had achieved what no other emerging species had ever managed: recognition as a sovereign power and the beginning of a path to equality with the Council. As the formal agreement was being prepared, Lieutenant Kyle Peters found himself standing next to Emissary Zalthrak again. I'm curious, Kyle said. What will you tell the other Council members about humans? About your time here? The crystal being's surface shifted in what Kyle had come to recognize as thoughtfulness. I will tell them, Zalthrak said, that humans are different, that they respond to demands with warnings, and that perhaps after 15,000 years the Council has something new to learn. 1 year passed since the agreement between Earth and the Galactic Council. The planet had changed in subtle but important ways. Ships from Council worlds now visited Earth regularly, though access was limited to specific areas. Human scientists worked alongside alien researchers, each carefully sharing some knowledge while keeping other secrets. Admiral Paul Hernandez stood with Captain Natalie Reed on the observation deck of the newly completed space station Unity. It hung in Earth orbit, its design a blend of human and Council architecture. From here, they could see the curve of Earth below and the stars above. Hard to believe it's only been a year, Natalie said, gazing out at the blue planet. She had commanded the Defiance during the crucial demonstration that changed humanity's fate. Now she was preparing to lead Earth's first official diplomatic mission to the Council homeworlds. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, Paul replied. Other times it feels like a lifetime ago. He turned to face her. Are you ready for your new assignment? Natalie nodded. As ready as anyone can be. The Pathfinder has been refitted with the new drive systems. We leave next week. They both knew the significance of this mission. As part of the agreement, Earth had been granted observer status in the Council. Captain Reed would be humanity's first official representative. Remember, Paul said quietly, they still don't know the truth about the Russell projector? That it burned out after one shot? Natalie smiled slightly. Don't worry. That secret stays with us. Meanwhile, in a secure laboratory beneath the UA, Rocky Mountains, Dr. Alan Russell and Commander Susan Collins worked side by side. The room was filled with equipment, much of it built with materials that hadn't existed on Earth a year ago. Try it now, Alan said, adjusting something inside a large device that resembled the original Russell projector, but was smaller and more refined. Susan pressed a series of buttons on a control panel. The device hummed to life, energy readings, climbing steadily on the monitors around them. Power levels stable, she reported. Containment field holding. She looked up at Alan with a smile. I think we've done it, Alan nodded, his tired eyes showing relief. A sustainable version. One that won't burn out after a single use. This had been their goal for the past year, to rebuild the technology that had saved humanity from subjugation, but in a form that could actually be used more than once. The Council believed humans already had this capability, but in truth, they had been working frantically to make it a reality. When do we tell the President? Susan asked. After the final tests next week, Alan replied. We need to be absolutely sure it works as intended. In Washington, D.C., President Olivia Grant sat with Eric Johnson in the Oval Office. A holographic display showed various statistics about Earth's new position in the galactic community. Trade is up 40% since the exchange program began, Eric reported. The medical technologies they've shared have already helped cure 3 previously terminal diseases. And what have we shared in return? The president asked. Exactly what we agreed to. Basic principles of the energy conversion technology, but not the specific applications. Certainly nothing they could use to replicate the Russell projector. President Grant nodded. Good. I want us to be fair partners, but we need to maintain our leverage. There's something else, Eric said, his expression turning serious. We've received a communication, not from the Council, but from another species entirely. They call themselves the Tellarites. The president leaned forward. What do they want? To talk. Apparently, word has spread about how Earth responded to the Council's demands. The Tellarites have been paying tribute for 300 years. They want to know how we managed to negotiate a different arrangement. This was unexpected. The Council had insisted that the true story of how the agreement came about would remain secret. But it seemed the news had spread anyway. What do you recommend? The president asked. Eric thought for a moment. I think we should meet them. Carefully, discreetly. The Council doesn't need to know. This could be dangerous. If the Council discovers we're encouraging other species to resist, true, but it could also be an opportunity. The more allies we have, the stronger our position becomes. In space, near the edge of the solar system, the Defiance maintained its patrol. Though its main weapon was non-functional, it had been refitted with conventional weapons and improved shields. It represented Earth's determination to defend itself. Lieutenant Kyle Peters, now promoted to first officer, looked at the ship's long-range sensors. Captain, I'm detecting an unidentified vessel approaching from Sector 7. Captain Lisa Morris, who had taken command of the Defiance after Captain Reed's reassignment, moved to look at the display. Council registry? No, Captain. It's not in our database at all. Lisa straightened. Yellow alert, open communications. The main screen activated, showing a being unlike any they had seen before. It had dark blue skin, 4 eyes, and what appeared to be gill-like structures on its neck. Greetings, humans, the alien said in surprisingly good English. I am Ambassador Kelvar of the Tellarite Union. We have traveled far to speak with you. This is Captain Lisa Morris of the Earth vessel Defiance. May I ask the purpose of your visit? We have heard a most interesting story, Kelvar replied. A story about a species that refused to pay tribute to the Council, a species that responded to demands with a warning shot. The alien leaned closer to the screen. We would very much like to know if this story is true. Lisa glanced at Kyle, then back at the screen. I believe you should speak with our government representatives, Ambassador. I'll escort you to Earth. As the Tellarite ship followed the Defiance toward Earth, Lisa sent an urgent message to Admiral Hernandez. This was an unexpected development, but perhaps not an unwelcome one. 1 week later, representatives from Earth and the Tellarite Union met secretly at the Unity Station. The Tellarites explained that they had been Council tributaries for centuries, giving up valuable resources for minimal protection. They had never dared to resist, having seen other species punished severely for such defiance. How did you do it? Ambassador Kelvar asked President Grant directly. How did you force the Council to negotiate? The President exchanged glances with Eric Johnson before answering. We showed strength, but also offered partnership. The Council understands force, but they had never been offered a different way forward. Could you help us achieve the same? Kelvar asked. Perhaps, Eric said carefully. But it would require careful planning. The Council must not feel threatened by an alliance, but rather see the benefits of expanding their new approach. As the meeting concluded, Dr. Russell sent word that the new projector was ready for demonstration. The timing couldn't have been better. Standing on the observation deck with Ambassador Kelvar, President Grant looked out at the stars. The Council has ruled through fear for thousands of years, but fear is a poor foundation for a lasting relationship. What is the alternative? Kelvar asked. Mutual respect. Equal exchange. A community of worlds where each contributes according to their abilities and receives according to their needs. She turned to face the blue-skinned alien. It won't be easy. The Council won't change overnight, but the first step has been taken. Because of Earth, Kelvar said. Because you refused to submit. Sometimes, the President replied, all it takes is one voice saying no to change the course of history. As the Tellarite ship departed a few days later, Admiral Hernandez joined President Grant in her office. Do you think they'll follow our example? He asked. I think they'll try, she said, and I think others will follow. The age of tribute is ending, Paul. A new age is beginning. And Earth's place in it? President Grant smiled. That's up to us. But I believe we've earned the right to help shape what comes next. In the vast darkness of space, the Council's massive ship still patrolled, still collected tribute from dozens of worlds, but something had changed. A crack had appeared in the foundation of their power. A single species had stood up and said, no, and the echo of that refusal was spreading across the stars. The Council had demanded tribute. Humanity had responded, with a warning shot, and the galaxy would never be the same.